So just to recap a little bit, we were Bonebjed is called in to figure out what to do about this. They want to stop Horus and Set from fighting. They want to find some kind of resolution. And I think, who do we have speaking here? Okay, so Bonebjed answers. And what does he say? Who wants to go first?
I can go first if
Okay, George.
if we're at that green line. Yeah. So so MJED 10F and then M is that MD?
Yeah, it's actually all of this.
The whole thing is MD, right? Up to the I, and then Erie N Secher M Hemet.
Yeah.
So after M Hemet, is it just N?
Yeah, it's just N. So Late Egyptian often writes these two N's just for the normal like N plural strokes.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
So that's N, and then Ini Hab.
Why don't we do just this sentence first? Let's just let's finish this one
there.
second. Yeah.
Okay. So let me roll this back. So it says saying as follows. He says as follows. It's a little bit tortured, probably. The way I would understand it is we shouldn't make plans ignorantly, but the way the words kind of lay out, it seems to me to be then I guess it's then, and then the Erie N is we make, and then Secher is plans, and then M Hemet is ignorantly. So I'm kind of reading in and understood not where it seems like another way to inflect the sentence would be, should we make plans ignorantly, like a rhetorical question? And the answer, of course, should be no to that. At which point, am I close?
Well, I think it's a negative imperative. Let's not, but literally don't cause. So don't cause that we make plans in, and then Hemet N. So Hemet is ignorance, but it's Hemet N.
Oh, it's Hemet N.
Yeah, there's a suffix pronoun there.
So it's not M Hemet. The word is not M Hemet.
Aurelio, what's on your verb form sheet?
The negative imperative. And I just know that because I had to look it up before this class. So M, Iri, and then Sejum F. Just the standard negative imperative in Late Egyptian. I think that helps with this sentence.
So let us not make plans. We should not. So how would it be? We should not be ignorant in making these plans.
Let's not make plans in our ignorance.
I literally see.
And then this combination. So we have this in Coptic as erashishi, which literally means like to make shishi, to make this word, which, you know, plan is fine. It's one of these words where there's just not a good single English translation for it. But combined, erashishi means to like to have authority, to exercise power, something like that.
Okay.
So it's kind of like make a decision. Yeah. Yeah, let's not exercise our power in ignorance or ignorantly. Perfectly fine translation.
Okay. Let us not make plans in our ignorance. And then I can keep going here. And then it's Ini, Chab, Wacha, which I guess is also some type of an imperative. Give cause or make it happen, make it be that cause to be sent a letter or
Yeah, good.
send a letter.
Yeah.
And then we go to the next line. Next line, right?
Yep. Here.
Which is N. I had a little trouble with the name of this, what I presume to be a god, which follows this, but it's N, which is 2.
Mhm.
NT or net
Neat.
or neat.
Yeah, she's a huntress from the Delta.
Okay.
She was actually a really prominent Egyptian deity, but she's not as prominent in our thoughts these days, primarily because most of our archaeology and most of our evidence for what life in ancient Egypt looked like comes from Upper Egypt, where things are well preserved. And we have comparatively less from the Delta, which was her home base. So we don't get like, you know, like we have the Temple of Hathor and the Temple of Horus and the Temple of Amun. You know, these things are very prominent, but we don't really have like a Temple of Neat that tourists go and visit and take pictures of. So she's kind of like underrated in our world, but she was a really prominent goddess in ancient Egypt.
Okay. And she's, because the next glyph is, or next glyphs plural is Wer-Necher Mewet, which is the great mother of the god.
Yeah, and
So-
I think we have a case of honorific transposition here, which probably, yeah, mother of God.
So which god is she the mother of?
Good question. Which god is she the mother of? I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
Let's just
That's
look
why
at
I
it.
was really throwing me off, because I was trying to go back and
She's the wife of Sobek in some things. I can't think of who she's the. Oh, or mother of Sobek, mother of Re. Khonsu. I thought Mut was the mother of Khonsu, but maybe they're being syncretized here. I don't know if Neat was syncretized with Mut, but
okay. So cause that a letter be sent to Neat, the great mother of God. And then
yeah.
here.
Actually, before we go on, we should probably at least
Okay.
take a quick look at the hieratic, make sure, give everybody an opportunity to ask questions. So we're here. Well, this looks pretty straightforward to me. This one's a little wonky. There's just not that much there. We have like just like the T papyrus scroll. There's just not that much there to work with. But we don't necessarily need to have both of those hieroglyphs to know what this says anyway. So it's close enough. And then the eye. So this whole thing. Aurelio, did I do that right?
We'll do the pupil first.
Oh, right.
Middle, left, right.
So that's the whole eye. And you can see that oh wait, start with the pupil. It never would occur to me to start with the pupil, drawing an eye.
Agree. It took me a lot of experimenting, like I said a couple of weeks ago. If you do it any other way, it just comes out funky.
Interesting. Okay, and then 2 reed leaves are NN plural stroke. Oops, lost my pencil. Okay, yeah, 2 reed leaves, and then plural strokes S seher. This one's interesting because they continue all the way around.
Beautiful.
R is normal.
I love the ligatures of this text. He does it all the time. Like whenever.
What is that?
That's just a line. It's a flourish.
Okay.
Just like
Described
the
as
Victorian beautiful handwriting styles where you have like, if you write a V, it goes on for another for another inch or so, because you need a little flourish at the end.
Yeah, that's what that is. These are not terribly clear, but we know so surely what to expect here that it's okay. They're kind of just smudged in. He did the big flourish and then kind of scribbled in the little parts that come next, but you know what they are.
The flourish is coming off the R.
Yeah. So this is the S here, and then the H, and then the R should be just a little thing like that. Like basically you're just drawing the R shape and then a tail that comes off of it. But then that tail just continues all the way around. And you can even see, like if I remove my drawings on top, you can see the ink getting thin.
Yeah, and he finishes it with a second stroke on the top.
I think
It almost looks like he did the R and then went up to the top and came down around, because it gets, you see where like there's a dark and light juxtaposition near the bottom.
So I'm thinking what happened here is, oh, I wish I could zoom in more. I really can't zoom in more without breaking things, but let's try it. Okay, so what I'm thinking happened here is, I think he did this. Aurelio, let me know what you think. I think he did this. And then because when you do this, you know, you have like, obviously the brush is kind of running out of ink. We have a dip somewhere around here and then another dip here. So this is really the last sign that he draws with this brush. So the brush is probably running low on ink. And then he does this long, fast sort of dramatic motion. So the brush is in contact with the papyrus for less time than it would be in a normal sign drawing, right? Because it's just moving faster. So I think that's why, like, we can actually see in the ink the velocity of the brush across the papyrus. You probably have something with like brushes deposit ink at different rates depending on the angle and like how much ink is on that side of the brush when it's moving in a certain direction. But you also see, like, you've had this experience writing with like ordinary pens. If you draw something really fast, the ink will kind of thin because you're moving so much faster that you're depositing less ink over time, right?
At the 9 o'clock position, there's sort of a break, like you have a wide part below and then suddenly it gets very thin. Like there was a,
you can really see the shape of the brush there. It's like, not brush really, it's more like it's almost like a kalam, I think. So you have a broad blade, and how do I do this? Like when you do the horizontal of the R, you're really like dragging the blade across. I'm using this book here as an example. And then you go down and it becomes thin, and then when you go up again, you have that broad side of the blade go up, and it becomes thin again, and then you go down. You can really see the thickness and the shape of the writing implement in this thing. So it's very different from our normal pens. It's more like a calligraphy pen, something like this, with a thin edge and a very broad blade. I'm not sure if that shows.
And isn't it generally the rule when you, even now when you do calligraphy, you don't drag up from, you kind of, I mean, he really went as far as I've ever seen anyone talk about going, even in modern calligraphy. You just go, then you complete it without turning the pen. The pen's always oriented in with the same orientation. The slice of the blade is the same way, and everything else, you're just moving your whole hand as you go. And he does really seem to do that, especially right here. It's like, and then it just comes back.
Yeah. There's and like the angles aren't going to be perfect because of course when doing a movement like this, like the angles of the fingers and things also move slightly, which changes the angle of the brush. But here we do have a good indication. Like if we look at the angle of the curve, if we do like a tangent line, you can see they're really close. Then if you look at the very fattest parts, well, I don't know. They're not, these are quite different. Let's try to find another one that matches this. Well, here we have one that matches. So you can do this a little bit to kind of get a sense of where things work generally, but then it's not going to be perfect because, of course, there are like there's the brush shape itself. There's where ink is actually thickest and thinnest in the tip of the pen, and then there's the angle of the shape of the end of the pen, like relative to the paper, and then that's also changing based on like the angle of the scribe's fingers. So it's a pretty complex combination of different factors. Aurelio really knows
the
this.
makeup of the paper too.
Yeah.
Of like the friction on the paper, because the papyrus varies over the surface. It's not the easiest surface to write on.
No, definitely not.
And you could really see how like he was the scribe was really at the end of, like, really he went as far as he could without reloading the pen, because then he really reloads it for the next glyph. Just heaps the ink on. But on the M glyph that's more to the right, the preceding M glyph, you can really see how he cuts it like really sharply. Because it's a distinct like slice and then a lift.
So can you do the strokes inside the ligature too? Like which part is the scroll and which part is the pearl strokes? And is that like two strokes? Is that all one thing?
It kind of seems to me like you phoned it in a little bit on the interior parts. I can plainly see this sort of thing. I don't know if that's really a separate stroke, but like this 3, it often ends up looking something like this, like a Wi-Fi symbol on its side. I can plainly see that part. This part, I don't really get much.
He does that a few times earlier in the text already. Like he has 3 ways how to write that little book row. One is essentially like an R. One is like an R with a dot on top first. That's the most elaborate. So like dot, R, or just the R, or then you have the one that looks like a Z, basically a Western Z. You'd have to go back all the way to the beginning. He has a few in the first few lines. That's quite nice to see. Let's see, for example.
This is the one that we're seeing here.
Right. And then if you go a little bit to the left, I mean, a bit further in the line, beyond the 2 reed leaves, then you see the one which has the dot on top. It's like first dot. First the dot, and then the R, and then the 1, 2, 3 plural strokes.
Okay, let's do it. So first the dot, then this.
Right, and then it's like, that's basically 3 strokes there. 1 down and then 2 more.
Okay.
You can see he uses the same purple strokes under the man, further to the left. So you have the little man on top, which looks just like the R, a bit further, that one. Looks just like the R, and then the same 1, 2, 3 plural strokes. That seems to be his style.
They always have little feet on them too. They're always kind of like this, like interlocking triangles. Okay, did that answer your question, Ralph?
Yeah, thank you. I think I see what's the connection with the earlier ones now. Because there's that little round thing on top, so he didn't do the dot, but the sort of circle thing is the scroll, and then there's the wiggles for the plural strokes. Where were we?
Here.
There we are.
Yeah. Peter, did you have a follow-up?
Oh, I was just saying the scroll is a really interesting one in the variant of the different ways it's written. So yeah.
Yeah. So it goes back to this thing I say all the time. Like if you're reading, once you get to here, you know with like 99% certainty what's coming next, right? So, and whenever that happens, doctor's handwriting principles start to apply. It's like everybody knows what this is going to say, so I don't really need to make it all that clear. Okay. So yeah, we should try to make a note of dips too. Dips are kind of interesting. Where the scribe has dipped his pen is often kind of fun to see. Might even be worth it on like a large text to mark it in some way and then kind of look in aggregate. See if you can discover any trends with pen dips.
Does the
Kind of a neat
papyrus absorb the ink, or does the ink just dry on the surface of it?
I think it dries on the surface. It mostly dries on the surface. There's a little bit of absorption, but it's mostly fixed to the surface. And I think the ink is normally like a bit of gum, some water or spit more likely, and just lamp black. So it's basically just soot.
Oh, really?
So it doesn't pigment things very well.
It just sits
It's
on
just
top.
held, yeah.
And there's some grease or oil component, whether it's saliva or something else. There's some that will kind of bind it together and not cause it to flake off.
The binding, I think, is normally gum. So it's like lamp black and gum mixed together into a little cake. And then when it's time to do some writing, you just spit onto that cake and then twirl it around with your pen. Aurelio, what have you found in your experiments?
Oops, you mean?
About ink?
Not that much. I mean, what worked best for me was Arabic calligraphy ink, which is exactly what you just described, essentially soaked in some kind of watery suspension. But then again, it really depends on what you want to write on. If you want to write on papyrus, I think that works well. I've also used acrylic, also works well, but certainly that's not what they did. So I think it becomes artistic choice what you want to do nowadays if you want to write.
It's just interesting to me that you can roll this up and the paint doesn't chip off.
No, I don't think it will. I don't think so.
It's a thin enough and wide enough layer that you're not getting a lot of mechanical stress on the actual ink layer. I mean, think of it like you can, I don't know if you've ever tried this, but you can like take a little dry erase board and use typical whiteboard markers and like draw something and then dip it in a solution of like isopropanol and then lift the whole drawing off. But when you do, you get this almost like this waif-like, microscopically thin image that you can then lift, or like the way a temporary tattoo works. Like the actual layer of binder and pigment is so thin that it doesn't normally chip or flake. You don't see that very often. It does sometimes, but normally what you see are things like this, where you get this is abrasion. The ink is actually rubbed, and you can actually, from this example, you can see the extent to which it does pigment the papyrus.
Mm-hmm.
The top layer has been abraded, and so what's left is how much it actually pigmented. I found that in my summer classes, I always have my students do a text on papyrus. And I think I used like lamp black and acrylic medium is the thing I found that works best, because then it basically flows and works just like gum, water, and lamp black, but then it dries waterproof. So that seems to work slightly better, but it basically has the exact same consistency. This ink is not waterproof, right? So, and we actually do have cases. There's some pretty famous cases of things like wills being deliberately modified by descendants to like get themselves a better inheritance and things like that. Because you can take a wet cloth and wipe off the text enough so you can't tell that there had ever been text there and go in and change it. Kind of neat.
I just love how similar we are throughout history.
Oh, some things never ever change.
Never change.
Yeah.
What is the red ink made of?
It is ochre. I think it's the same binder, but with red ochre instead of lamp black. It is so vibrant. The only other thing I could think of might be orpiment, but orpiment I think is a mercury compound, which would make it highly toxic. So you wouldn't want to be like spitting.
Aurelio's got it right. Don't lick your brush. Not that stopped them, right?
Yeah.
All those lead.
Just gonna say, don't Don't lick your pen, basically.
Yeah.
Wasn't
Be
that
like
something in the Name of the Rose?
Yeah.
Anyone ever read that book
Yep.
by Umberto Eco where they lick their
Yeah.
thumb and the ink
Yeah,
the dye was poisoned or whatever?
Is it like
the evil
arsenic?
monk put poison on the corners of all the pages of the books he didn't want people
Yeah.
to read. So if you
Oh,
had
okay.
them finger to turn the
Something like
page,
that, wasn't it? Yeah.
die.
There's a scene in I think it's The Last Emperor where the like young boy emperor orders his servant to drink the green ink. And it's so lost in the movie, but what you have to know is that like arsenic green that the ink probably would have used is like extraordinarily toxic.
Oh, they used arsenic for that? I just assumed it was copper, which is bad enough, but
It seems bad too. I don't know how bad. But I think
Ground malachite
I
or
think the
something.
scene is meant to imply, I heard this somewhere and I was like, oh, that adds so much more to it. I doubt
that
it, I doubt it
the
was
guy's
ultimate.
gonna die.
Yeah. Let's just look. Let's just look at these things.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
I know, Aurelio.
Ooh.
I know.
Oh boy.
I saw
Yeah,
ochre.
you could have just made it be really cool and you could have said he used blood. And then
But
everyone
blood
would have been
doesn't
like,
dry
wow.
red.
I
Blood
know.
Yeah,
But it would have been
it needs to
cool.
be oxygenated.
It
Sometimes you have
would've
to
been
sell
cool.
the sizzle, not the steak.
Okay, fair enough.
So ochre is iron oxide, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an iron. I don't think it's pure iron oxide, but it's like an iron compound of some sort.
There is
I
a
don't know, maybe it
version
is just
of
iron oxide.
Egyptian. Maybe you just
It's
thought.
clay. It's like a clay.
Yeah.
It's not rust.
Oh, yeah, it is just iron oxide.
Hmm.
Hematite. Okay, that is what it is. Just based on my very brief exploration of this, the color is ochre. Like it is. It just clearly is.
And then would you just grind that up with some other substance then? Like just like you did with the lampblack, or
Yeah, just gum.
okay.
Just mix it with gum.
Okay.
And you've got ink. It's really simple to make ink, actually. There are lots of different ways to make ink, but if you needed to make ink in a pinch, you could do it very easily. I've made my own ink many, many times in lots of different ways, and it's surprisingly easy. What's most surprising about it is just how much there is going on. It's kind of like whiskey or wine or something, where it's like it seems like such a simple thing, and then you start like doing it, and you realize that like the slightest little change produces totally different results. Interesting thing. Something.
Prison tattoos, don't they use like lamp black or something?
But they use ballpoint pen ink.
Oh, that
Yeah.
sounds really bad.
Well, they're in prison. I mean, I don't. I literally
Okay.
thought that's what they did. They took a ballpoint pen, they ripped the tip off, stuck a needle in there, and then just, hence the
Might work too.
the pejorative a jailhouse tat to describe
I
a
mean-
tattoo that's monochromatic and smeary and blurry and
Pejorative. It sounds super badass, honestly.
okay. To each his own, then I suppose.
I mean, I'm not gonna do it, but it's kind of
You gotta be in prison first.
yeah. Well, I'll maybe avoid that part of the process if I can.
I do think it's interesting how maybe this is just a coincidence, but it seems like the scribe has reloaded the stylus like a little bit later each line. Like he like gets into the flow of writing because it's like a diagonal line of heavily loaded glyphs on the left-hand side as we go down each line, or is that just how you've cut it?
Well, it's cut according to the actual papyrus to where the lines are. So it's
you can
not
see,
broken
like,
by
the-
like phrases or anything.
Like where we were, like with that swooping R, the next glyph is heavily loaded, but the line right below it, it's like another centimeter further to the left, and then the line below that, it's just a little bit further to the left. It cuts this diagonal line.
Okay, so it's
He's fairly
here.
consistent to your point. I mean, he basically writes as far as he can. And
Yeah.
Alan has this beautiful, and the Hieratic letter has this beautiful count for how far you can get on one loaded brush. And he's basically trying to deduce from that if somebody was copying a pre-written text, or if somebody was writing on the fly, and if you could tell anything from how often he did about whether he was writing it like in the thought of composing the letter, or copying something that was pre-made. So it's
Or how
something
much he could remember at once. How much of what he was copying he could hold in his head at once. Like if it's a simple sentence, he can probably hold more and go further and go quicker, more quickly.
Possibly, yeah. But it could also just be basically the writing instrument. How much ink can you get on there? I think in a
Yeah.
Arabic calligraphy, you dip very frequently, which if you come from like a Chinese kind of background, it's insane how often you have to refill, quote unquote. So at least from what I've seen on what people do. So yeah, I don't know. This is complex.
Would this have been written with a rush pen, or is it late enough that maybe it was a reed pen?
Good question. It's certainly not. It's certainly not so late to use a Kalamos, but then the dividing line between rush and reed pen, I don't know for sure when that is. I've seen various things over the years. It's not totally clear to me. What we can say, I don't really know how you would tell. What we can say for sure is
a rush a different kind of plant then? A reed is a harder.
It is.
Yeah, it's a completely different plant.
Edges and brushes around. Reeds are hollow all down to the ground or something. It's the kind of amazing stuff you can learn from the National Park Service in the US. They actually have like a little ditty for that. So they are different.
Cool. Thanks.
so in really late, like in Coptic and Greek manuscripts, you can and Demotic is where you see this the most. Like in Demotic manuscripts, you can plainly tell when something is written with like a pen versus a more like brushy type stylus. You can immediately tell. And there's even kind of a general transition between like very old Demotic is kind of chunky, like it has like fat lines, and it's kind of mushy. Like you make the shapes by just sort of mushing a brushy tip to create the basic outline shape without like a clear stroke delineation. And then later texts, especially like Ptolemaic Demotic texts, you see these like really clean lines, and they tend to be more consistent in how they draw the shapes because you can see every individual line. This is the chunky old way. So I think that makes this, oh gosh, I've already got them confused. I think that makes this a rush pen. But that's not always true. Like, so this is New Kingdom, late New Kingdom, like Ramesses period. There are earlier texts than this that appear to be written with like a much finer, sharper point. The traditional argument is that the Kalamos arrives with the Greeks, but you know, we certainly see earlier cases of them using like a reed implement of some sort.
So the rush pen ends up looking kind of felt tipped.
Yeah, felt tipped. I say chunky because that's fun, or chonky if you want to kind of like memeify it a little bit.
Chunky boy.
Yeah, because when I was experimenting with that, I found that you sort of have to grind it down a little bit to make like a blade, almost like a felt tip thing, because otherwise it's round and you can't really, you know, get contact with the surface so well.
Yeah,
so
you can't
kind of grind it.
You can't draw anything with just like a raw. Which one is it? Rush. You can't really draw anything. You have to very deliberately shape it to like a pointed tip to be able to do. I don't know, Aurelio. I think you've done a lot of this. Is this what you found?
No, I was distracted for a moment. Apologies.
No, it's okay. With writing with a rush, you can't just take a rush and like chew the end and start writing with it. You have to very.
If you chew the end, it frays out and it's a complete mess.
Yeah,
it definitely doesn't work. The interesting thing is if you look online for, you know, because it's very common as a tomb accoutrement to have that scribe palette with a couple of rushes stuck in it. And if you look carefully, none of them seem to have shaped ends.
Yeah, we looked at this. You and I looked at this at the
we went through this on the Discord several months ago. So it's a little weird because, I mean, of course, if it was just made to put in a tomb, then it isn't really meant to be used. So there was no need to like shape the end. you know, but you'd think you'd find one somewhere that showed evidence of shaping at the end of the rush.
Oh, there definitely are some, and they've been cut to
Yeah,
have a point.
yeah, because that's that
mean,
seems
something
to be the
interesting-
only way to get it to work.
Something interesting I found that sort of squared the circle for me. So lots of descriptions, when you read them, they talk about how Egyptian paint brushes were supposedly chewed on and had bristles, almost like a Chinese writing brush. Then again, if you look at some of the photos, most of all, if you look at the text, it really looks like a solid blade. It doesn't look like individual fibers. It doesn't matter whether Middle Egyptian or later, it always looks like a solid surface. And then Hayes, I think, no, it's not Hayes. What's the guy's name again? There's a book called Egyptian Materials from the 40s, 50s. It's been around for a while. I have it sitting here somewhere. And basically, the way he explains it is that the paint brushes, the ones for painting, that those were chewed on and then actually had individual fibers. And that sort of makes sense for me. Maybe that's where the confusion comes from. Different tools for different purposes. So one thing is if you want to like finally, I don't know, fill in the white in the eye of a drawing, and a completely different story is if you just want to write. So I still maintain that what we're looking at here was done with a solid surface, not something that was chewed on. It just doesn't work. I've seen several people try it, and to Dante's point, it just always looks messy. It never gives a nice shape.
Yeah, it doesn't work. I've tried it too. It just doesn't work. Egyptian Materials and Technologies, that's the book. I can't think of the author's name either.
I can see it from here. I'll be right back.
It's a we should definitely mention the author because
I want a copy.
That's a really important book. Every Egyptology department has a copy of that book. And you like, I don't have a copy here, but I think I do have my own copy in my storage. And you just refer to it, not every day, but often enough that if that's something you're interested in, you should probably have a copy of that book. It's incredibly useful.
There may be a link to it in the Discord, the Hieratic calligraphy channel. Or I think what I did is I extracted from the PDF the chapter about writing implements and posted just that, a PDF of just that. Maybe a link, maybe uploaded to the Discord. I don't know. It was a while ago.
Okay. What is it? What is the title then, Aurelio?
I'm not sure if we're talking about the same. This one is the one I was thinking of. Lucas, Egyptian Materials and Industries.
Okay, so there's that one, and there's also Egyptian Materials and Technologies. I'm just gonna ancient Egyptian materials and technology. This is the one I always use. I just am drawing up. Nobody ever refers to it by the authors. You know, it's one of those books that everyone refers to it by Nicholson and Shaw.
Interesting.
This is a really good book. The one you have, Aurelio, is quite good, but I think it was superseded by this one.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know.
I think I actually bought this one for our department because of I was like going around kind of filling out the departmental library with things that we didn't have yet. And I think that was one that I actually found and bought years ago when I was just being a busybody in my department as a grad student. Yeah, it's an awesome book. There's a PDF of it. I have a PDF of it on my computer, I think, so I can probably share that in the private channel.
Yeah, cool. Ancient Egyptian Materials and Technologies by Nicholson and Shaw. Yeah, it's like 180 on Amazon.
Wait, really? I think I saw it for like.
I just saw it for 70.
Yeah, this is 70.
Oh, paperback 70. Yeah. Sorry, I was looking at hardback.
Oh yeah, the beauty of having to pay more everywhere else, but that's a completely different story.
Yeah.
Rasmus looked at that the other. Was it Rasmus? No, somebody. No, was it Sweden? Yeah, I think somebody on Discord in Sweden was trying to buy a book, and if you went off Amazon, it was basically 40 to 60% more minimum. Absolutely insane. But yeah, should we do another one?
Yeah, let's do some more. So we're probably not going to get your 4 lines, Aurelio, but we got pretty far. Another cool ligature here. Just note it briefly. Kind of doesn't match the transcription very nicely, but oh well, close enough. We know the word that needs to be there. And then we'll little walking legs. Look at these you'll sometimes see them like fully drawn with the little feet, but this one is just like a lambda, barely anything there. 2, ligatured, weirdly ligatured. Quail, very upright quail chick. The ha looks perfectly normal. And then this guy, look at this guy, this sign. It's like huge.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Beautiful.
Okay, and then these look like you'd expect. The egg has gotten squashed. Where is always huge for some reason. And I think it's because the word where means like big. They always draw it big. Maybe it's kind of a priming sort of thing. These look.
Are those not plural strokes under the coil of rope at the end of the line?
They are. Yep. Good call. Good catch.
He was
And make a
feeling
little,
feisty in this line. He did those 3 flourishes in quick succession.
Okay, that's a good correction. I also need to make this correction.
Oh, random question about JSesh.
Mhm.
So you just published that specific line as an image, and then you matched it up with the image size of the line above it. That's really, really helpful.
Actually, what I did is I exported them as images, and then I just copy and pasted them into the Google Doc.
Okay, cool.
I wanted to do something where you actually like crack open JSesh and like use its code to generate all the images, and that seemed more trouble than just exporting them. You know,
Yeah, I got distracted and stopped helping.
Oh, it's okay. It's how it goes. It's this age-old problem where it's like, I could do this task in 1 hour, or I can write a program that does this task for me in 5 minutes, but writing it will take 3 hours. So it's on this constant, like, you know, optimization that you're trying to do. I opted for just doing it myself.
This is a similar thing that I was trying out with the Harper song, or a Harper song, from the last exercise in Hawk. But yeah, I find it much more helpful how you have it all on one line. And what I did was I just copied some glyphs because I didn't want to take the time to write it all out in JSesh, but
Well,
is much better.
You know,
So
you do what you can. This system seems to be working well, especially for our purposes. So, and yeah, if we ever
it
put it
matches
out there
up
into
quite
the
well.
it does. It's kind of nice how well it works. I'm pleasantly surprised. Like even you get places where it gets a little bit off. Like in here, we're getting a little, like our connecting lines are getting pretty crooked. And then, you know, I put in the space and then they all line up again. And you get here, it's like, you know, now it's way off. And like, by the time you get to the end of the line, they basically, yeah, their variance sort of cancels out. You end up like approximately matching up, at least good enough for learning hieratic, which is our purpose here, just to like, you know, have ample opportunity to just look between both things enough times that you kind of build this mental map between the different shapes, which is a bit artificial. That's probably not how ancient Egyptian scribes did it, but also ancient Egyptian scribes spoke this language fluently. So, you know, okay. So this is we're pretty much there. Oh, I'm already past what we've done. Okay, good.
So is that an egg in Net's name?
Yeah.
It's the round thing.
It's an egg.
Okay.
Why is it an egg? I don't know.
Because it is the determinative for feminine names or feminine words in the late period.
Oh, I've never noticed that. I did not make that connection at all. Interesting. I've seen it 1,000 times. I never picked up on it.
I saw it. So as at least Ptolemaic era, for example, the proper names like Cleopatra, Arsinoe, or something like that, mostly.
Oh, they always have eggs. Yeah.
Yeah, and as I know, in late Egyptian, there is also function. It is also has function like G39 is sign is saw something like
Yeah, once you start getting into those really late writings, the egg can be a bunch of things. So yeah, it can be like the word sun, but it also does correspond to feminines a lot. I mean, you see that all over the place in like Ptolemaic glyphs. But I don't think I had ever like consciously made the connection between the egg and the feminine. It's plainly there, for sure. Yeah, good catch, Mr. Okay, so where are we in this? We got to here, talking to Neat. Does someone want to do at least one more sentence? Do I have a volunteer?
Do it. Oh,
Okay,
go ahead.
Aaron,
No, go ahead. Whoever that was.
other
Oh,
person?
you go. Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, where are we? Okay, Irpa Neti. Uset Jed 2F. Irpa. Ir is like as to.
Mm-hmm.
As to Patneti, that which.
Yep.
As to that which she
Mm-hmm.
said.
Yep.
2F. Is 2F just part of that? Like the
We'll talk about 2F.
direct object or something?
It is the direct object, yeah.
You and Iref. We do it. We will do it.
We will do it. Yeah, this is a third future. They, in a lot of late Egyptian texts, they leave out this expected R. We are to do it.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely what that is. Correct on ear. As for, and then this is just the masculine singular definite article. As to the, which, and then eus. Yeah, eus. As to that which she will say it. S, minor note on S. So the third person feminine singular suffix pronoun is generally written with a T in late Egyptian. I think we might have seen that before.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jed Tef. So this thing, what probably happened here is that, so this is an infinitive, and in certain verb classes, infinitives always end with a T. So what that ends up doing is, if that infinitive is followed by a suffix pronoun, the T is preserved. So you get something like bring it is like ntef. All the way into Coptic, it's ntef. Whereas it's ini in the absolute form. So that T gets preserved by the presence of the suffix pronoun on certain verb classes. And it seems like that sort of tef ending was like re-bracketed as its own direct object pronoun. So like it goes from being something like intef, bring it, and instead of interpreting it as inet f, they start reinterpreting it as in tef, with tef being the direct object. Then they generalize that to all verb classes. So verbs that weren't of the same class to have a T in the infinitive end up using the same direct object pronouns, with this to being written out because it was generally being preserved in pronunciation. And there's a vowel in there, right? It's actually in tef. So yeah, that's where the U comes from. This is actually a case where we might expect it to be written this way, even without that generalization, because probably the final D in Jed was no longer being pronounced, but then there probably would be some kind of like apical stop if it were followed by a suffix pronoun. So something like jataf. And we see this in Coptic if you've seen, pen died again. If you've seen like joos in Saitic, there's a remnant of a T in that glottal stop. So it probably would have been here as well. So yeah. So that's what all of that is. These are actually in our grammar. We haven't done them in the late Egyptian class, obviously, but these are in the grammars as their own class of pronouns, because this process was complete in late Egyptian. So now these just are the way of having a direct object pronoun. It's pretty much the main way. You still have the dependent pronouns and they're still used in certain cases, but for the most part, if you have an actual direct object on a verb, because all the verbs are these infinitival forms, like the third future, you're always going to see this type of direct object pronoun. Okay, and then the last part you got exactly right. Untitled. As for that which she shall say it, we shall do it. And notice one last thing to make a note of. The F is third person masculine singular, agreeing with the pa, sort of this implied that which is masculine now. So if you've studied Middle Egyptian, you've been told over and over that like an unknown object is always feminine. So the feminine is kind of the stand-in for the unknown neuter. In late Egyptian, it's now fully masculine. So if you don't know what something is, you just say that which using masculine pronouns. And then the F is a resumptive pronoun. So relative clauses in Egyptian, unlike English, you don't say that which she will say, you have to say that which she will say it. You have to put that direct object pronoun in there still. The main reason for that is that the relative, whatever part of speech it is, the relative thingy in Egyptian is totally unmarked. So when you're constructing a relative clause, you actually need to know where the antecedent actually ends up in the subordinate clause. So you need some kind of pronoun that refers back to the antecedent of the relative thing.
That makes
this is really a pronoun.
That did throw me because I felt like it did, because of English, I felt like it didn't need that direct object. It felt like I was not understanding what it was, but that makes perfect sense.
Once we look at a bunch of examples of these, it will start to make sense, because you really, really need them. There are lots of relative clauses that you can construct in Egyptian where like there's absolutely no way to tell what happens with that which, like that which in the house, or no, that which in it, that which it is in it, or whatever. Like you have to have the pronoun to tell you what part of that phrase that which actually ends up in. You need kind of like a pointer back to the relative. So yeah, and we'll see examples of those pretty soon. I think it's the next chapter, actually. I know it's the next chapter, although I don't know if we see clear examples of that, but we're going to start doing relatives. They're really fun. Okay, so I think we should stop there because it's almost time for late Egyptian. And oh, we didn't look at the hieratic, did we? Did we look at the hieratic? Oh, we already looked at it. I went through it. Yeah, it's all here. Yeah. Are there any questions about the hieratic before we go?